If your name is Joe Biden and your claim to fame, your claim to the presidency, your theory of the case is that I'm the guy that can beat Trump like a drum, and you make that case, and for roughly a year, for the most part, the public believes you on that, even if they don't necessarily like your policies, even if they don't necessarily think you're entirely trustworthy, even if they think you might be, to be honest, a bit of a soft grifter. Ultimately, they gave you the benefit of the doubt with that particular claim that I'm the guy that can beat Trump. How weird of a place that we've come now where the public no longer believes that you're the guy that could beat Trump. And instead of dealing with the other candidates in the race, you've been relegated to attacking your main competitor, the actual frontrunners, supporters. Not even hitting the candidate, but hitting the supporters. Now, this should be understood for what it is, basically a cynical ploy to undermine one of the key strengths of Bernie Sanders, meaning his support, the enthusiasm, the 17,000 people that came out to the rally the other night, barn burner, political rallies that for the most part look like rock concerts. This is his strength. I always make this joke that Sanders supporters, on the day of the election, we could be inundated with an alien invasion and get sheared off half the body with the laser beam, and he would still crawl to the election, stained in blood, pulling the lever for one Bernie Sanders. That's enthusiasm, that's energy. That's not necessarily something people have been able to contend with, especially the other campaigns that have nowhere near that level of support. To put it in perspective, like I said, the 17,000 people at the rally, no one has come close to that. The number of people who are donating their time and energy to his particular campaign. And keep in mind, a large contingent of these people are younger, meaning he has a diverse, multiracial, multi-ethnic, effectively both genders campaign. He's across the board. And then across the board in that particular way, especially with a large contingent of the youth vote, you can add everybody in that race together, and they still wouldn't equal the number of people Sanders is getting under, 35, and the number might even be up to under 40 now. My point is, with that amount of support, you are just going to, by definition, dwarf the amount of energy in the other campaigns, dwarf any kind of back and forth that's taking place on social media. And yeah, again, the stadiums themselves gets across that enthusiasm in real terms. The entire point of all of the campaigns resonating on, the Bernie bros, essentially this new reinvigoration of the Bernie bros with all of the campaigns jumping in on it. How cynical. As if the other campaigns don't have their supporters that actively go after and attack their competitors and their rivals. As if the other campaigns don't have supporters that say mean things to Sanders supporters, especially the women that are within the Sanders team. The media is blowing this up, and the political campaigns for the most part is blowing this up. But again, all of it boils down to the cynical, swift voting to try to get Sanders to either impugn his own supporters or, for the most part, to try to undermine one of his main key strengths. If your name is Joe Biden and you've fallen into this particular weird spot where you're attacking the other person's supporters for saying quote unquote bad things about you, and it's not quote unquote, but effectively saying bad things about you and the other people to which you are in a competition with. If your claim to fame is you're the guy that could beat Trump, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're not the guy that could beat Trump. This is one of the weakest, most pathetic, weirdest, cynical attacks. Again, not even on the candidate himself, but on the candidate supporters, the voters themselves. And I call it cynical because Bloomberg even jumped in on this. Essentially, the guy that is vulgar and grotesque, outright racist, I don't even think that's in question at this point. An oligarch that is literally buying the race, and even he's jumping in on this bandwagon of, Sanders supporters are too divisive and too aggressive and too enthusiastic. Finally, Sanders has started to push back on this nonsense, and has finally come up with a good answer for this, as opposed to just accepting the rationale for people who are just massively disingenuous, effectively political actors. But I want to focus on Joe Biden for the moment, because Joe Biden has also lumped in on this very particular point with attacking the supporters. This is the most oblivious man on the planet, Chuck Todd, assisting Joe Biden in getting this particular narrative out in the public.
And he's all in. Are you confident his supporters will do that, or are you worried that some of his supporters, and do you think if his supporters are attacking culinary union members, who's responsible for that?
Well, look, he may not be responsible for it, but he has some accountability. I'm going to not put you in a spot you don't have to. You know me well enough to know if any of my supporters did that, I'd disown them. Flat disown them. The stuff that was said online, the way they threatened these two women who are
Joe Biden said he will flat disown them. He will flat disown them. Now, just so we're clear, he's talking about things that are taking place on Twitter. Sanders has millions of people that are supporting his campaign. And the notion that you would go on Twitter and find a few things on Twitter of people saying bad things to people, and this to somehow gets cast onto the candidate himself. Again, the notion that a few tweets is supposed to somehow cast a particular campaign in a particular image. Grow up. It's Twitter, it's social media. People say bad things to them and each other on social media. And again, if you can't take this, then the notion that you should be put in the general election, oh, they're saying bad things about me, they're dogging my campaign, man. Fact of the matter is, Joe Biden just doesn't have the support. He doesn't have the cash, he doesn't have the support. And again, at this point, his key argument to why he is even in the race has evaporated. And so the guy who was running with the notion that I'm the guy that can beat Trump has been cowed into the weird position of not even arguing I'm the guy that can beat Trump, but arguing that Sanders supporters are saying bad things about me. Sanders supporters are saying bad things about me. And to put this in perspective, look at the polling, meaning this is where we are. Because they've thrown the kitchen sink at Sanders. I mean, for fuck's sake, the guy had a heart attack. And right now, Marist poll, Sanders up 12. Monmouth, Sanders up 10. Morning Consult, Sanders up 10. Quinnipiac, Sanders up 8. I could keep going. Pretty much every poll that has been coming out has been showing Sanders to be dominant. This is NBC News, again, national. Sanders, 27%. Biden, 15%. Bloomberg, 14%. Warren, 14%. Essentially, Biden could end up in 4th or 5th place again. In Nevada, Sanders taking it 31% to 16%, meaning the next closest person, 16%. If Sanders wins that race, meaning Nevada, in dominant numbers and goes running into South Carolina with a head full of steam and wins in South Carolina, Joe Biden's campaign is over. And again, I make the point that it is a sad, sad spot to be in, where all of your devices that you've been using to try to win this race have boiled down to electability. And that argument has gone tits up. And now you've moved to the sad, sad, weak position of not even able to mount a decent argument against your competitor, but instead bitterly go after just regular run-of-the-mill people, voters, some of the weakest people on the planet from a political sense. Those are the people who you decide to attack. Joe Biden has just had a surrogate to have to resign. Now, why did the person resign? The person resigned because even though Sanders supporters might be saying bad things about Joe Biden and some of the other campaigns, and again, they're also saying bad things about us. This is somewhat fair play. His supporter, his surrogate, ends up making anti-Semitic statements about Sanders and fabricates a video. Meaning one of Joe Biden's official surrogates fabricates a video and gives it this title, acting as if Bernie Sanders is just loving the Soviet Union. That person has had to resign. I want to talk about that case for the moment, because while media and everything else has been focusing on this weird narrative of, oh, his supporters are saying bad things about us, there are actual larger issues that the public can make a determination on what's more important. The fact that this person has enthusiasm and his supporters are aggressive in pursuing the aims of their particular candidate and that other people just can't compete on that front. Or the candidate flagrantly lying. Not his supporters, the candidate himself flagrantly lying. And maybe you could say that the surrogates for Joe Biden have just taken a card from the candidate himself. Meaning, to some degree, Joe Biden is responsible for the behavior of the people within the context of his own surrogates, not his supporters, his own surrogates. And in the same way that surrogate thought it was perfectly okay to lie in order to go after their political opponent, to some degree, Joe Biden has been emblematic of that himself. And you can make a case that that surrogate was only taking a card from the person at the head of that ticket. Welcome to a late night soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This is one of those when real men can't sleep, real men do the news. And I have a few shows that I want to get in before I turn in. Yeah, I have a few shows I want to get in before I turn in. Contributor appreciation will be, as a flat fact, absolutely tomorrow. Let's set that for 5 o'clock, because there should be enough time for Miss Thomas to kind of help out, and that'll give me enough time to get from work and everything else. So, I am not going to spend a lot of time on this issue, but I've been somewhat enamored with this notion of attacking Sanders supporters. I've never seen anything like it. Any of these campaigns would kill for this level of support. They would kill for this, even half this level of support. They don't have this level of support. So if you can't necessarily replicate, you bitch in the shadows and you just complain that, oh, look how energized those people are for his campaign. Yes, look how energized those people are for his campaign. That's what it's like to be a winner. And between a candidate's people on Twitter and people on social media, God, it sounds so stupid to even say it, but supporters on social media going after other campaigns versus the candidate saying something like this. I find this to be infinitely larger of a deal.
When I was a teenager in Delaware, for real, I got involved in the civil rights movement. We have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, then I'd go to Reverend Herring's church where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater or what we were going to do. I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. But I got...
Now, just so we're clear of what's taking place here, Joe Biden is making an argument that he's made on more than one occasion. And since he can't necessarily think of anything new and creative in order to entice people to vote for him, one of the key constituencies that he's been able to con into thinking that he is something that he is not is unfortunately the black demographic. And in the same way Hillary Clinton was talking about guzzling hot sauce and breakdancing on her lips, Joe Biden has did something that was even worse by making the argument that he was somehow a part of the civil rights movement and has taken the gone from one black church looking one black face, looking in the eyes of one black face after the next, and telling them that he, Joe Biden, was part and parcel to the civil rights movement. The reality of it, however, is this.
60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved. In what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I'm in my own city.
Now, that's his own words. That's not me putting words in his mouth. That's not me doctoring a video. That's Joe Biden coming out basically saying, yeah, I wasn't really part of the civil rights movement. However, that has not stopped him from going from pillar to post saying that he was a complete repudiation of the truth. Essentially, war with reality itself. Now, what matters to you more? That a candidate will look people in the face and use something as pressing and as overwhelming as being a part of the civil rights movement and how that movement has fundamentally changed this country and claiming to be a part of that. What's more important to you? The fact that somebody would brazenly get out, look into the public, and lie, or the individual candidate supporters who are aggressive and agitating for their guy? I tell you this, lying about something like this is worse. Lying about the Iraq war vote is worse. Lying about the Social Security cuts is worse. Making the argument that black folks can't raise their kids is worse. Whatever you want to say about the supporters themselves, it's a little bit different when the candidate at the top of the ticket is a flagrant liar. Now, this, of course, doesn't necessarily stop at the top of the ticket, which is the issue. One of Biden's surrogates is forced to resign, and forced to resign, in the same way that a person who has sex with a cow on the desk at work is forced to resign. This is, take a look at this tweet. I found this to be hilarious because this gets all the sincerity associated with the attacks on Sanders. So, right here. This is Linda Lee. Linda Lee is a Biden surrogate, or at the very least she was. Say what you will about Bloomberg, I applaud him for calling out Sanders and his ruthless supporters like Joe Biden also did. All right, she's giving praise to Bloomberg. Fair enough. A few moments later, Biden surrogate Linda Lee, the woman who you just read the quote from, was forced to resign as treasurer of the PA Young Democrats after spreading doctored video of Bernie Sanders and making anti-Semitic comments about him. Those two things happened in very short order. I told you, it's cynical. It's entirely done, not because these people are legitimate. This is this kind of weird tone policing done to try to entice the public into thinking bad about various supporters. The problem with that is the overwhelming majority of the public backs the guy, especially within the context of the Democratic Party. And you are effectively pretending as if a large contingent of women and a large contingent of people of color don't exist within the context of that movement, when in all reality is Bernie has more people of color in his contingent than anyone else by double digits. All of this is just cynical politics. All of this is being done just to undermine the supporters of a particular candidate or the strongest suit. It's kind of like swift boating, where John Kerry comes out, his military record is one of his strongest attributes, and they hit him directly on the military record. Well, and this is, I guess, goes to my idea of politics also. If the strongest suit for Joe Biden is the elderly vote, then you need to take a hatchet to the elderly vote. This is the exact same thing, just done towards Sanders, but not done towards the candidate, but done at the supporters. That's just such a weird way of going about politics, because ultimately you're still going to need those people to vote for you. And the notion that you've been attacking the voters and that those voters are going to turn around and vote for you after a process where all of the other campaigns in the race thought it was perfectly legit to hit voters. That seems like a failed strategy to me if the strategy is to win in the end. It's cynical. That's all. Biden surrogate hits Sanders for being, those guys are rough. And then you find out that she was making anti-Semitic tweets and making videos doctored in order to give across an image of something that wasn't true. So right here, Biden surrogate Linda Lee was forced to resign as treasurer of the Young Pennsylvania Democrats after spreading a doctored video of Sanders and making anti-Semitic comments about him, tweeted immigration paralegal Jamie Augustine, who broke the story on Twitter. Linda's doctored video, which was edited to appear that Sanders was praising communist dictators, had 2.5 million views. Augustine added in another tweet, which contained screenshots of two alleged anti-Semitic tweets authored and retweeted by Lee. According to the leaked messages, Lee sent in a private pro-Biden group chat, the Biden campaign knows about all of this, she added, suggesting that the Biden's recent public denunciation of Sanders' online supporters was coming from a place of cynicism and dishonesty. So wait. You're saying that the candidate that flagrantly lies about everything from being part of the civil rights movement to his Social Security record to his Iraq war vote, that candidate that flagrantly lies to that particular extent may be having a disingenuous attack on Sanders in an area that he in no way can compete? Yes, that's probably more likely than not to be true. Let's keep going. But basically, they're implicated by saying, look, Biden already knew all of this. Biden already knew all this. Now, let's keep going. Biden has openly attacking quote-unquote vicious Bernie Sanders supporters online for the past week, but at the same time, millions of people saw a fake video designed to smear Sanders, spread by an official surrogate of the Biden campaign. So right here, Augustine shared screenshots from several pages of leaked group chats titled "J-Have Biden Front," in which Lee describes the context of the separation from the Young Democrats of America affiliate group. "I was forced to resign as treasurer of PA because of my anti-Sanders tweets," Lee said in a leaked chat. "No more fundraisers. Screw them." A little bitter. A little bitter. I hate to tell you this, but you're the one that made the fake video. You're the one who was putting out anti-Semitic tweets. How are you getting mad at them for pushing you out, for making them look like, well, corrupt idiots? Yeah, to a certain degree, it's a competence, but it also just makes you look fundamentally dishonest, something that Joe Biden already has a problem for. But again, I make the point that the guy at the top of the ticket is flagrantly dishonest, so the fact that one of the surrogates was taking a cue or page out of his particular book is not all that shocking to me. I just want to get across more than anything else on how disingenuous this particular attack on Sanders supporters is. And if you are stuck in a situation where you can't hit the candidate, where you can't attack the candidate in any particular way, where all of the attacks that you've leveled on the candidate for the past year have come with you ending up in 4th and 5th place in the last few states, with people not considering you more electable, and with you potentially even losing in South Carolina, a state where you had 20 and 30 points. And after this level of abuse, you end up not being able to hit the candidate in any real world terms, and so you end up going to hit his supporters, voters, as if your supporters, the few that you do have, aren't also vicious and don't also say very mean things on Twitter. And in this particular case, one of your surrogates, official surrogates, is out there making fake videos and effectively being anti-Semitic. Talk about sweep around your own front door. So right here, Lee's original post was shared by a who's who collection of hashtag resistance and never Trump cohorts, establishment liberals and conservatives who have long expressed extreme antipathy towards Sanders, democratic socialist politics, and working class supporters. In the doctored video, misleadingly titled, hashtag Bernie Sanders lavishes praise on communist Russia, preferring the Soviet Union to the American way of life. That's mind-blowing. Now, nothing in the video is getting that across, but most people don't necessarily go beyond that, especially when they already hate the person and they're just looking for anything to hit the guy with. But in this case, again, Biden surrogate doctors a video, fabricates a video, put that video out there with a misleading headline, in addition to other anti-Semitic tweets. What matters more? What matters more? And be honest. A campaign that is full of flagrant liars that are willing to doctor videos in order to attack their candidates, not to mention the guy at the top of the ticket flagrantly lying about his record through and through, as if he's never done a good thing ever, just lying. Or supporters that are energized and feel for their guy and find themselves in hostile territory with the media apparatus that has gone against them whole hog, with a political class that has gone against them whole hog for the longest time, pretending that they weren't even standing there, not to mention the outright cheating. Yeah, I would imagine the supporters would be animated. They should be animated, because if it wasn't for those supporters, Sanders would not be where he is right now. It is lunacy to believe that a few tweets and a few Facebook posts should somehow, meaning the candidate should somehow disown his own supporters for putting out various attacks on other campaigns in the same way that those campaigns attack his own supporters. It's lunacy. It is utter nonsense. And I hate to tell you, it's pretty pathetic. If you've been cowed into the position where you are out there attacking the supporters of another candidate, then you are not the guy to beat Trump. And if this is where you are now, where else do you go from here? I suspect you go home from here. When Biden loses in South Carolina, that is going to be the end of Joe Biden's political career. Majin Bull, Warren has a new PAC and won't disclose its donors. Why am I not shocked? Why am I not shocked by that? All right, I'm going to end this because I have 1 or 2 more videos that I want to do before it gets too late. So I'll see you guys in a few. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks so much.